and welcome to Bury Our Bones with Cinema, the podcast that lives, breathes and dies classic movies, not so classic movies and everything in between. Joining me once again is the Robson to my Jerome, the wonderful Mr. Simon Key. In today's episode, we spend an evening babysitting the Antichrist with the 1976 film The Omen. So join us as we run away from a pack of demon dogs, be very wary of anything falling from the top of a church, and finally remember to look for a birthmark of 3 6s. This podcast contains spoilers. 1976 is the year, and The Omen comes out, and it was kind of, I have always seen it as like the British version of The Exorcist. It's very similar in its themes and its tone, and I've always seen it as like an accompaniment to The Exorcist.
Is it after The Exorcist?
Yeah, so The Exorcist was 1973, so this came 3 years later. So obviously probably heavily influenced by the success of The Exorcist, which we've just done an episode on, so check that one out. And in some ways, I prefer it to The Exorcist. I see it more as an enjoyable film, whereas I feel like The Exorcist is a bit of a powerhouse. You have to really be in the mood for it, but that's just my personal preference.
So when I was young, this film scared the living daylights out of me, really. I probably saw it when I was too young, and maybe there isn't, maybe because now watching it back, I watched it in the daytime, to be fair. Would I have a different opinion if I'd watched it alone at night when I was a bit overtired? Because there were moments today where I was watching it and I had that sort of afternoon slight sleepiness, and when I started to get a bit like sleepy, the music would come on. And but this has got, I know this film is surrounded by like weird, like lots of dark, people died around it, and there's lots of like Gregory Peck's plane got struck by lightning. There's all these weird, the Omen curse, and it's a whole YouTube black hole, and you can spend a whole world there. And I feel like it was known before the world of YouTube as well. There's all this myth around it, which always makes a film more of a cult classic if it needed more of the status of one. But I feel like there were some things I just fundamentally like. My brain had totally sort of made up its own version in my head, and I think a lot of it is maybe down to Only Fools and Horses with the Damien. Yeah. And I think I don't know, but I always thought the Damien theme, the Omen theme, was. Is that not it? And
no,
that's just
I
from
don't.
Only Fools and Horses.
I don't. Yeah, that. I mean, you've hit upon my first, kind of. I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say
Exposure
here.
To
Exposure.
The movie.
Thank you very much. Always good on a podcast when you can't pick your words properly. But yeah, my first exposure was through the Only Fools and Horses running gag about, Damien Trotter being, the son of the Antichrist, and every time there would be some weird stuff happening and that music would play. So I didn't actually end up watching this probably until my teens, when it was like, I'm finally going to get around to watching what that's based on. Why is that joke so funny? And it makes that joke a bit funnier when you've seen this film. But yeah, I think that from certainly from a British point of view, that's probably where a lot of people would have, or certainly our age, probably would have had their first exposure to it. Obviously, you're slightly different.
No, I think I probably knew. I'd probably seen Only Fools and Horses before this film. I'm not sure though. I can't quite remember, to be fair. But that was so iconic. The sort of Nicholas Lyndhurst reaction to the baby being called Damien.
Yeah.
So why would you? What would that film be? Such a big British film. Like, what was he thinking? And he hasn't seen it, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, hang on a minute. Damien Trotter. That's just got a nice ring to that, Rodney.
But like, it's so I thought, so the theme I'd remembered incorrectly for all these years, and I do recognise it when I hear it now, to be fair. Also, there was a whole scene that I was like, the bit that I've said out loud, I was like, the bit in The Omen that really scares me is when he goes into the back of a lorry and there's a stone tablet, and in the stone tablet there's a picture of like Damien's face or something. What's that in?
That's the second
It's
Omen
okay.
film. Yeah.
So what I've done is just confused them. But that was the bit I thought I was waiting for. I was like, oh, when is that bit coming? But I guess it's easy to confuse them. And I like the fact this film is part of a bit of, it's more obviously, but it's a trilogy really initially, isn't it?
Yeah, so obviously we've recently had the first Omen, which is kind of like an attempt at revitalising the genre, which is actually a very good film in its own right. So I would definitely recommend that if you haven't seen that. And it kind of tells the story, I believe, from memory, it's been a while since I've seen it, tells the story of how Damien was born. So you get everything prior to the start of this film, pretty much, in terms of Damien's conception and being born. So the other kind of original ones of the original kind of run, you obviously have the second film, you have the third film with Sam Neill, and then there's a TV movie which I believe is called Awakening. So the Omen 4 Awakening.
I've seen that.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's almost like every time there's a creepy thing that happens, the girl who plays, because they change it at that point where the Antichrist is now in a little girl rather than a little boy. I commend the attempt to take it in a new direction. Makes sense. However, the girl they cast, obviously, child actors are difficult anyway. It was like everything she'd done when it was a bit creepy. It was almost like she was looking at the camera going, hey, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It was all a bit kind of, oh, right, this is really like... It felt like a really bad episode of The X-Files rather than it being, in the same universe as The Omen. So, which brings us on quite nicely to the fact that I always say this when we watch films that have a central character that is played by a child. I say played by a child as if they're not playing a child, but a child is one of the central characters, because that can very easily go one of two ways. It can go, in this instance, that child is quite creepy and perfect in what he does, and the brilliance, I think, of this original is that it doesn't do a lot.
I don't even know if he's in it that much.
He's not in it. He's the backdrop, and the focal kind of narrative is more about Gregory Peck's character kind of battling with this idea that his son might be the Antichrist, and obviously Catherine, played by Lee Remick, is kind of one of the kind of first proper real, well, not the first casualty, but for Gregory Peck's character, Robert Thorne, the first real casualty. It comes from his wife Catherine. So,
and that is a bit of an insane way to go out the hospital window, isn't it?
It's pretty darn crazy.
The ambulance.
And it's interesting because what you were saying about, and we had a little discussion prior to recording about how what you remember about a film and what bits stick out when you haven't seen it in a while. The thing for me, I kind of forgot that's how she died. I always thought she died when she fell off the balcony staircase in her home. But obviously, all that does is causes her to lose their baby,
their actual child.
It
starts off as a whole bit of it's not really a switcheroo, but the thing I totally forgot on the plot of this is that he goes to Italy to adopt a child and then brings home Damien.
Well,
she loses a child.
He doesn't go to Italy to adopt a child. I believe at that point he's the US ambassador for Italy.
Okay.
So they live in Rome, and they fall pregnant, and then during childbirth they lose the baby. But Catherine, Lee Remick, isn't aware of this, and so there's a bit of a dilemma from Gregory Peck's character Thorne, where he's going, well, do I tell her and break her heart, or there's this opportunity here with this, at that point he thinks it's just, there's nothing sinister at play.
They're like, God's given you a child tonight.
There's definitely that question around faith and, there's that kind of undertone and undercurrent with it. But obviously at that point, it's just he makes a decision very early on, and kind of what I like about the film is his decision to do that kind of pretty much leads us down the road we get to.
Yeah, if he was just honest. I mean, because she might have reacted in like, because he never really comes clean to her about that, does he? Throughout the whole film, it's very old school in the way that he is.
Yeah,
he is with it. He's very much Mad Men. Like he makes a decision as the man, and because he's, it kind of makes sense. But there's a bit of an age gap between Gregory Peck and his wife. I think she's probably like closer to 40 in age, and the actor is 60, and he definitely looks. They're not casting him as a younger man. I don't think.
No,
I think there isn't, and he's definitely from a time where the men makes the call, and they're still talking like, find me a doctor. It's very old school in that respect. And I think he makes this decision to like, well, I've got this opportunity here. This kid needs a home. It's a bit of a savior complex thing, and I think it plays on this fear of like. You see in American films all the time, and the babies are all like laid out. Again, they look through the window of the babies, and you hope no one switches them.
Yeah.
Like this. And she has this sort of sense, doesn't she? She says, "I just felt." He speaks to her. He also speaks to her psychiatrist, who just tells him all the stuff, or everything.
Some serious data protection issues going on
but
there.
It's a different sort of time.
Yeah,
he was like, she thinks the child is alien to her. I love some of the interactions in this movie actually, because like even the psychiatrist he's so sort of black and white. It's like he thinks the child is the spawn of the devil.
Yeah. Not only is he discussing patient confidentiality things, he's also not sugarcoating it as well. He's being very, very blunt and being very, as you say, black and white. And I think one of the difficulties that I think the 2006 remake has is it kind of forgets that this was made in the 70s and things were a little bit different. Watching this film, that doesn't stand out quite so much as being odd because it was made in the 70s, whereas in 2006, similarly, essentially it's virtually exactly the same film. So those things in that doesn't quite, because it's a bit like, well, hang on a minute, why would you fucking tell her husband about that? That's a bit dodgy, isn't it? And it comes across a little bit more as, at no point in this does it feel like Gregory Peck is controlling or coercive or anything like that. It's just that's how things were done in that day. And if anything, he's a good man just trying to do the best by his family. But in the 2006 remake, it comes across like there's some kind of weird undercurrent of, well, it's all his fault because he's really controlling. But it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, and arguably, at the end, he's lost, he is holding a child with a knife about to, I think he does go to do it.
Yeah.
And he does, it depends, the sort of, what I remember being young watching this, I wasn't necessarily scared of Damien. It's very much like why you would be scared of like those Final Destination movies. Like there's a real unseen like scariness to these films, and it feels, if you believe in anything of the devil or stuff like that, like if you believe there's any truth in that, or as a kid you just sort of, you can really sense, like, less so now to be honest as an adult watching it back, but it's not like there's anything missing from the film now watching it. But when I was younger, I do remember just, sensing the presence that they're all afraid of in this. And it's really, it's cleverly done, like in the photos. Like it's unseen, but you can see sort of evidence of it when in photos. Like the photographer's quite a main character in this. And obviously it, comes up with those lines across them, which is, it shows sort of how they're going to die. One has a line across going towards the neck. The other has a line, in his back, and he gets the spire on, which you can't now not think of that scene. We always talk about a movie, the one with in the mini village. The model village.
Hot Fuzz.
That's that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, it does a good job of having having the unseen power, and it does kind of play out like those more modern Final Destination movies. Like, how's he? And anytime they do something a bit dangerous, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be when the sort of the devil, because it's not said, is it? It's like there's like the force of like the, almost like if God has a sort of spiritual presence, it's like the devil clearly has some way to manipulate reality.
And I think it is a really good kind of example of that phrase that you hear all the time, where the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing everybody he didn't exist. You know, it's that thing of going, and this is very much down to Richard Donner, because the original script, which was written by David Seltzer, had a lot more kind of ham-fisted, really obvious like imagery. So there was things like, these creatures that, you know, when they go to the graveyard towards the end of the film, there were these creatures that were kind of there, and they were like guarding the, you know, and it was really kind of really almost to the point of over the top. And when Richard Donner came in, he was basically said, look, if this is going to work, this has to be credible. It has to be like totally 100% believable. And the way to do that is to have everything that happens be totally 100% conceivable that it was coincidence. And that's the thing, like, you feel like there's a presence in this film, but at no point do you really like see the devil. Or obviously, because we've all watched a film and we know what it's about, we kind of know that Damien's the devil and he's the Antichrist. But there's always this kind of thing of, well, is he? Well, is it him, or is it all just, you know, the guilt of him not telling his wife that they lost their baby and taking this, you know, this orphan in? Is it, you know, all of these things which, you know, if you're that way inclined, and you believe in God and you believe in the devil, you're going to see what you want to see. You know, it's all of those kinds of things. And Richard Donner, you know, was the one who kind of spearheaded that and made it. He said, you know, obviously this is a horror film because of the subject material, but he said he didn't want to make it just a horror film where it was, you know, the Antichrist comes and kills everybody. He wants it to be like a mystery suspense drama. And it is just much that, you know, the things that I love about this film is finding out about what happened. How did Damien come to be? How did he get to a point where he was able to be taken in by, you know, Thorn and his wife? All of those things. It's one of the things that I feel like in modern horrors are the things that I like the most. So one of my favourite films is The Ring, the Japanese original, and there's a big chunk of that which is like a detective kind of novel where people are trying to figure out this backstory and figure out how this legend came to be. And it, you know, quite heavily influenced by this, maybe not in a way where people would immediately go, yes, that's directly influenced by the Omen, but in the structure and in the narrative, it's very clearly not just a collection of crazy death scenes and this scary kid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. It to be honest, having recently, you know, just when the TV's on in the background, you get a bit of Jessica Fletcher and all that stuff. You know,
Are you saying this film would be a bit better if it had Angela Lansbury in it?
Probably around that time. She's probably really cool as well. She always was. But
there's also a part of me then that almost tried to do an impression of Angela Lansbury, and then realised, oh fuck, I can't do an impression of Angela, and it would have just sounded like me going slowly insane.
You could have probably sung one of the songs from Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
I could have done.
I don't know any of it. Oh, something. I don't know any of it. She does magic spells, doesn't she?
Yeah.
A Crombie Tenacious D. Is it that one?
Did you just say Tenacious D? I don't think she's in Tenacious D, Pick a Destiny.
Watching it, because the mystery in this and the sort of how sort of, you know, now watching it, the priest is initially, when you meet him, he's quite one-dimensional, really. Like, he's very like fanatical.
Your son is the Antichrist.
Yeah, and when they only have an hour of TV or 45 minutes, however long it is, to show you a few different characters that might be who did the murder in a Jessica Fletcher thing, Murder She Wrote, or in the hospital of Diagnosis Murder. the characters are always quite like that. I
Yeah.
feel, and it does feel a bit like a sort of murder mystery. I guess a bit like Wicker. This doesn't feel as dry as the Wicker Man. I'm not sure why. I think it might just be where it's set. It's like kind of weirdly dry about the Wicker Man, but it's still got a little. It's got that sort of mystery. This feels a bit more cinematic, actually. That's what I'm.
Yeah,
really
and a lot of that comes again back down to Richard Donner, which is weird to say because this was like his big break. Like this was his first proper foray into Hollywood, really. And it's crazy to think that if this film was a flop and didn't work, you wouldn't have got Superman, you wouldn't have got Lethal Weapon, you wouldn't have got all of the Richard Donner films that came after this. And that's crazy because, in a day and age where there's a new Superman film out and, we were talking about it the other day, all it's made me want to do is go back and watch Richard Donner's Superman, and without this film, you don't get that. And it almost was surprising when I was researching this, and obviously I kind of knew it anyway, but just kind of being reminded that this is Richard Donner, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the same guy who done Lethal Weapon, who done Superman, who done, I believe he done the Goonies as well. I think, yeah, he done the Goonies, and that's that I think is the sign of a properly good filmmaker when you've got The Omen, one of the classic horrors of the 70s, and then you've got Superman, which is one of the classic action movies of the 70s, and you've got Lethal Weapon, which is one of the classic 80s action movies, and then Goonies is like, without the Goonies, you don't get Stranger Things. It's crazy to think that, and it all started with this film.
Do you like Gregory Peck?
I really do like Gregory Peck. He's that old kind of movie star that you don't really get anymore. Like, interestingly, another name that was in the running for this, who the reason it went to Gregory Peck is because this guy turned it down, is Charlton Heston. And you don't really get those kind of names anymore where they have a gravitas to them. Sean Connery is another one where they have this kind of presence without it being forced and without it being ham-fisted in any way. And I haven't seen a lot of Gregory Peck's work, to be totally honest with you, but every time I have seen him, I've gone, oh, it's Gregory Peck.
I'll tell you what, it's funny you mentioned Charlton Heston, because the one Gregory Peck film that I've seen quite a lot, and I've seen it growing up because my nan used to like it, was The Big Country, and I really like the theme from it. It goes, but in that film, he's obviously quite a bit younger, and he has a fist fight, quite a famous one, I'd imagine, with Charlton Heston. And
I mean, that just sounds like a Western movie lover's dream, doesn't it? Charlton Heston and Gregory Peck having a fist fight.
Yeah, and in that, Gregory Peck plays a sort of a straight businessman that comes to the Wild West, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're too sort of," and he gets humiliated when he arrives. He doesn't care because he's like he's made his money in the city, not by wrangling cattle or shooting people, and he sort of has a lot of honor. And he never really uses violence to settle his score until he has this fight. That's it. He only settles the score. Sorry to ruin that movie, but he only settles the score when he's been assaulted. Like, he wakes Charlton Heston up at night, and then they go for a brawl, like where no one's watching him, because that's how honourable he is. Doesn't want to fight in front of his like woman. and he's. I really remember. I've always liked him in that role as his character, and in this, I think when I watched it back again this time, I was like, was he cast because he's a big name, or was he cast because he's like right for the movie? It's probably all of it, right? But I do think with this, it really works that he's like an older parent, because he feels, I'm not saying all older parents are more detached from their children, but from my experience, when you meet a sort of older parent and they've lived a bit more, he's got a really important job. He's quite removed from his children. He's got like nannies in all the time. And it does work for the plot, because when you skip to the end of the movie and he's about to, like, commit that, potentially, have to sort of slay his potential adopted son or Damien, the kid sort of goes, "Oh, Daddy, please stop," or whatever. But they don't have like any. They're not really that close in the whole film. Is that what I'm trying to say? There's a sort of.
I think you used the word perfectly, detached.
Yeah.
And I think there is an element of that is probably like a lot of families in, from that era, really, where, as you say, because the father was the breadwinner usually, he went out to work, so the kids stayed home with mum, and that's probably where that detachedness comes from. And obviously him being a little bit older adds to that further. And I think one of the beauties of this film is that because he's the main character, essentially, Robert Thorne, he kind of has to like face that element of when his wife dies, he's like, oh, I can't, and it's not really a massive focus, but there is this element of like him going, well, I have to deal with this problem now.
Yeah.
And I can't be at work, doing whatever it is I do at work. I have to deal with this problem. And naturally, his way of dealing with that problem is to leave his son in the care of the nanny and go to Rome and find out more about, it.
Do a load of selfish man stuff.
Yeah, go and live it up in Rome. But no, and I think that's a really kind of interesting character arc of him going, okay, I've now got to deal with this. And the way he deals with it is by doing the exact same thing that he's kind of always done, which is leave somebody else to take care of the child whilst he goes and figures out all the important stuff.
Yeah, I feel like this film plays on like the fears that we all have of children and having kids, and like someone we're like 33 now. Someone, it might be imminent that would probably have a child at some point. This, for some reason, a lot of people our age seem to be having kids at this time rather than in their younger years. And they haven't had kids for, it might have even been why she's had complications.
Yeah.
Actually, could have been the devil though. I'm gonna have to ask you about some of the backstory here, because watching it again, I was a bit confused at some points, and the internet didn't have the answers to my questions. But I'm hoping, Ryan, you do.
Well, that's quite a big task, but I will see if I'm up to it.
But yeah, I feel like the fears that we have as having. Like it's that thing of like it is the thing that Only Fools and Horses got so right, of like being a bit freaked out by someone else's kid or something, and then that you will have this feeling. I'd imagine other people have it as well. It's like, will I love my kid as much as other people love their children? Do you know what I mean? Everyone has these types of fears and stuff, and there's women get postnatal depression. Lots of people have traumatic childhoods and don't have good relationship with their parents, and it's this like it's this thing is like, what if my child is a monster? It's like, I've done everything I can, and he's just screaming, and you're in having a nice dinner somewhere, or you're in a big supermarket and there's screaming kids, and you're like, oh my God, I'm glad that's not me. And it's like, well, we're all here because someone else decided to take a chance and or was carefree in some way, or they actively decided to have a kid. Like we all exist because we've been born, obviously, and we've all been given a chance in that way. And it's like, and I don't know, I'm getting at here, Ryan, but do you know what I mean? I feel like it's these fears.
I think that the whole undercurrent is fear, not just of being a parent and loving a child. Obviously, in this instance, it's also loving a child from Thorne's point of view, loving a child that isn't actually yours. Seeing your wife not love this child as much and go, well, of course she doesn't. It's not hers, but she doesn't know that. So there's that kind of fear. There's the fear of, your faith being tested. Whilst it's not massively explored, this couple are religious because that's when they kind of get the first not the first, but one of the first kind of inklings that there is something slightly strange about this boy, because when they go to the church, he kind of has this hysterical,
and
reaction
no kid
to
wants
it.
to go to church,
Yeah,
really, on a Sunday.
And that's what I mean, going back to the whole thing of it all
Tuesday.
being coincidence, where, yeah, that could quite easily be a kid just going, I don't want to go to church with loads of people talking. I want to go and play with my toys. And
that big pointy building's scary.
Yeah.
That big monolith.
It is a really imposing, obviously great for it from a point of view, from a cinematic point of view, but from a general point of view of a kid going to this big monolithic building being like, oh, come on, let's go and speak to God. And it's like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to go there. Like, I want to go and play on my trike or whatever it is.
He's pretty, and already, if you're coming at it from a point, I mean, it's pretty clear in this movie he is the spawn of Satan. But if you're coming at it from a thing of if he wasn't at this point, he has just seen a woman sort of hang herself. Like, it's probably messed him up. It's this the zoo sequence. There are some things in this film, like what I think. You're probably pretty sort of resistant to horror movies in general, Ryan, because you watch a lot of them. And I wasn't scared of this today, but like if I watched this by myself at night, I'd probably be a bit.
It sounded like you were trying to convince yourself of that rather than me. Yeah, I wasn't scared of this when I watched it today. No, I was fine. I wasn't alone.
In the hustle and bustle of the house in the daytime, it nothing can really. But some stuff probably could, but this didn't. But I promise but at night there is some stuff that would freak me out, and it's because there's real scary stuff on. There's scary dogs, there's scary baboons are very scary.
I mean, this is there's a lot in this film that plays on like my genuine fears, like being allergic to basically any animal with fur. I'm always really, really fearful of dogs, cats, any kind of animals, really. And it's got, not only has it got interestingly, there's the dogs in this are Rottweilers, and I wasn't attacked by a Rottweiler, but that's how I found out I was allergic, because my auntie had a Rottweiler and it licked my face, and then I ended up looking like I'd done 10 rounds with Mike Tyson because my face swelled up. So inherently, I have a big fear of not only dogs, but specifically Rottweilers.
Yeah.
And German Shepherds, because I was chased and, again, not bitten or attacked, but licked all over the face by a German Shepherd as well. So it's got dogs in there, and then it's got baboons, which are freaky looking things anyway.
They are a scary animal.
There's a really good documentary, really good special feature on the DVD that I've got with Wes Craven, and he perfectly describes baboons as like a minotaur type thing, where they have like the body that is kind of like a chimpanzee, but with the face of this scary looking dog thing. And when you really look at it, you go, their faces do kind of look like dogs.
Yeah.
And yet they've on like chimpanzee bodies. They're freaky looking thing. And then they got these massive fangs as well. So it's like, and not only that, there's hundreds of baboons. It's not just one baboon. There's a whole classroom of baboons, and it's playing on all of my fears of animals just being really interested in attacking me. So
yeah, and poor little Damien too.
Yeah, poor little Damien.
Why do you think animals, maybe it's explained in some of the lore, but why do you think animals, I guess, for some reason Rottweilers seem to want to look after Damien, but the baboons...
Well, I don't think it's Rottweilers. I think that is a protector of, it's almost like hellhounds.
Okay,
what I kind of interpret it as, and I think that a lot of the film is taken from the Book of Revelation, where the writer wanted everything to be really kind of grounded in in reality in terms of, the law and the scripture and everything. So everything has so 666 is the number of the beast, for example. Okay, it's not necessarily a birthmark, but they've used that as a basis. The photography is also not from the Book of Revelation, but is a thing that since photography has come out, there's always been this spirit photography, and photography being, like windows to like another world. And there's always been that kind of thing. So it's all very grounded. And I think a lot of what films similar to this that have come after it have kind of missed is they've gone far too into the fantastical of it all. They've gone into, okay, we've got like a demon child. Okay, well then the demon child has to look really, really scary, like they're a demon. It's like, no, they just have to look like a normal child. That's the point. That's what makes this scary. The closing shot happens to be completely a fluke as well. So the closing shot is they're at the, spoiler alert, they're at the funeral of Robert Thorne, and we see these two people, which, presuming based on the sequel, is the brother of Robert Thorne who takes in Damien after his death, and his wife, and in the middle is Damien, and it's like a zooming out shot. And we see the silhouettes, and then all of a sudden Damien turns and looks directly at the camera. And apparently what Richard Donner said, he said, right, Damien, well, he didn't say Damien, obviously. He said, whatever his name is, because I can't remember.
Yeah.
I want you to give, just look at the camera, just look really, really kind of stern, quite angry. Just look at the camera, and whatever you do, don't laugh. Do not laugh. And they're shooting it, and the whole time Richard Donner is like, talking through it and giving him, direction. Okay, that's great. Don't laugh. Seriously, don't laugh. And you just see, and it's in the final shot, he just starts to smirk, and it's just because the actor was finding it quite funny, was trying not to laugh. But in the context of what they're doing, it's absolutely terrifying to see that there's this recognition that because there's always this question around, because at no point does Damien ever kind of, at no point obviously does he say, I am the Antichrist, I am the devil, I am the son of the devil, or whatever. At no point is there any kind of recognition that he is what he is. There's hints, but there's no real recognition. And then in that final scene, it's almost like he's smiling, saying, yes, I am the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And it's frightening, and it was a complete fluke.
As a lot of those good moments come up like
and
that.
Also, in the original script, Damien was supposed to be killed.
Really?
Yeah. So he was supposed to be killed, as they were all supposed to die, the Thorns. So
we quite like a bleak ending, don't we?
We do.
So we like this film.
Yeah.
So the that one bleak ending I didn't like in horror or scary films is Eden Lake. I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it, but I've just brought it up.
Yeah, you know what I mean. No, that maybe not spoilers. Well, it's maybe spoilers alert for that one as well. But yeah, that's too grim for me. But
I think the vast majority of people listening will probably know that Eden Lake has a bleak ending.
Yeah, but this is like, it just, because it allows the story to continue, doesn't it? And it feels like Gregory Peck's character at this point. Is it Mr. Thorne or something?
Yeah, Robert Thorne is Gregory
I feel
Peck.
like he is sort of, he kind of acts all a little bit too late, doesn't he? So the vicar character is an interesting character. When we first see him, he's got a cross on. He comes in, he's like,
your son is the son of the devil,
and
you must kill him before he kills you and takes everything he has.
It's very like Simpsons-y,
yeah.
I feel like, but so his character, I think he's explored a lot more in the new remake one, isn't he, or the new one they did? Like when they did is it a prequel? I don't know.
Yeah, yes, the first Omen. Yeah,
and he I think I'd imagine was a devil worshipper who then has been reformed and now is trying to, because he had the 666 on him. Does he?
I don't think he does.
Oh, okay. Fair. I thought they're looking at photos of the coronary reports in the.
Oh yes, sorry, yes, you are right.
I'm not sure though. I can't.
No, I think you are right.
But the scene the scenes in this that I would say it gets. I guess another thing, the unseen in this movie is scary. This force that can manipulate stuff, like it can strike lightning, and but it's like nature as well. Like it just starts like when Gregory Peck meets the vicar because he's set to meet him, and he tells him what to do and stuff. I don't think Gregory Peck properly listens to him at this point.
No,
He wants to
no.
hear him out, but he just thinks I think he ends the conversation by saying, I don't want to speak. I don't want to hear from you again. This is insane. You're a fanatic.
Yeah, it's kind of the point with Thorn where he goes because he's intrigued and he's going, okay, this weird stuff is kind of happening, and he did kind of. I think at this point he knew. Oh no, he doesn't know. This is where he finds out that his wife is pregnant.
Yeah.
So it's not at that point, but he kind of. By the end of the conversation, he's kind of like, "Oh, I let my curiosity get the better of me." He's a madman. He's a crazy fanatic. He's saying, "I need to kill my son." That's absolutely ludicrous. I don't want to see him ever again. And it's interestingly, I think what opens his mind is the fact that the photographer, played by, I believe it is David Warner, he's the only character in here who doesn't really have any faith.
Yeah.
He's kind of outside of any kind of religion, and so he's kind of a bit more. He's a bit like a bridge and a gateway to there being this kind of, okay, well, I don't believe in God, so if I believe, then there must be something to it, and I think that's what eventually convinces Thorn that actually there may be something to this. There may be more than what it is. But what you were saying about nature, I think it is, the unseen force of this. And I think it goes back to that old thing of like, the audience's imagination will fill in the gaps. So the fact that we never see the Antichrist in obviously we see Damien, but we never really see what that means. We see the effects of, nature. So leading up to the priest's death, obviously there's, torrential winds and, very, very heavy rain.
Hooly.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, it's blowing a gale out there, isn't it? Yeah, like really sort of like all of the things, and there's lightning and there's those things which are quite scary on their own. If you've ever been out and about when there's lightning and thunder, part of you wants to go, right, I better go home quick. I don't want to be out in this. And then obviously with this undertone of, oh, this is a sign of the devil, then it does take on this new form.
This moment as well, when it's I have memories of when we used to live. We lived in the countryside for a bit when I was younger, and we used to walk up this road called the Chalky Track with like a dog or something, and it was all flat on a hill, and there was like one tree, and it was like a thunderstorm came, and you have this. Wind starts blowing. Suddenly, you're not having fun anymore. you know what I mean? And then you're like, I hope it doesn't strike lightning and hit us, and and it blows and blows and blows. And you walk back, it takes about 20 minutes, and then you get home, open the door, you sit down, and your mum makes you a tea or you watch TV, and it's like, oh, I'm safe. It's like this all builds up to this climax of the worst case scenario of what could possibly happen. The church is locked, there's no shelter, you're stuck out in it. And then he gets the spire through his back, and then it's this idea of like fate as well. We've seen it in the photo and now it's coming true. He stands there for an awful long time to watch it come down. It's like, he's great. He's great.
Yeah. And would you like to know how that shot was achieved?
No, please tell me.
So, and it's a wonderfully simple premise. So essentially they had this harness which had a extending rod that came out either side. So on one side it went up and on one side it went down. So he's wearing it, and then at the right point it then extends. So it looks like something's gone straight through him, but it doesn't. And I think that's, again, a little bit of movie magic.
Yeah.
That really adds that kind of level of that little bit of extra spice that makes you go, oh, that's tasty. That's very nice.
It is. It's very. It just sticks with you, doesn't it? Like the image of how many.
It's his face as he kind of realizes what's happening. And again, if you want to be really kind of pedantic about it and go, well, just move out of the way, just move to the left or whatever it may be.
It's a film.
It's a film. And also, if you want to start reasoning with stuff, what you said earlier about the fate and the fact that there's a photo that's been taken of it, I think the point is that it's all led to that moment.
Yeah, and when you go, like, it actually kind of, I forgot about that. When he goes to the photographer, who I really like that actor, actually, David Warner.
Yeah, he's great. Good. He's great.
When they go to his sort of flat, I won't say flat. He lives opposite the church in a little abode, and it's covered in, it's papers all again. It's like a sort of Psychopath's Den in a Batman film, but he's got, like, for him it's like religious scripture all over the walls. It's like crosses everywhere, and the photographer says it's almost like he's trying to keep something out, and it's almost like, there's a kind of thing. It's like, at least he's free from whatever was tormenting him now, but he's probably in this film, he's probably in hell.
Well, he says it, doesn't he? He says, "I don't want to see you ever again." When Thorne leaves the priest, and the priest says, "I'll see you in hell, Mr. Thorne."
Yeah,
so it's like he's resigned himself to, he knows what's coming. So it's this weird
he ain't
thing.
Gonna move left.
Yeah, it's always this weird kind of thing whenever you talk about fate and going, well, he's obviously got to that point and it looks like he's kind of accepted it, and well, I know he's going, no, and that shot of his face is really kind of sticks with you, and it becomes one of these things that probably it's the most well-known part of the film. If you've not seen the film, you've probably seen that. You've certainly seen that parodied if you've seen Hot Fuzz. To go back to that, essentially when Tim Messenger dies, it's exactly the same thing pretty much, albeit that's pushed rather than.
Yeah, I was referencing the moment where he gets it in the mouth.
Yeah, well, I think Hot Fuzz,
but it's also got one from above, and it goes, like explodes.
Yeah,
like
so I think Hot Fuzz, it kind of has those influences anyway.
Yeah,
it's a film that changes its genre halfway through, where we think it's a buddy cop film, and then we find out actually it's this weird Wicker Man-esque horror cult film. So. Yeah, in terms of like fate, and in terms of like, do we have any, autonomy over what happens with our lives? If he had have moved to the left, would that thing just have followed him? If he'd have run away,
it was windy.
Would it exactly?
Yeah,
exactly. Everybody's seen a crisp packet fly down the end of the road.
Yeah,
who's to say it couldn't have happened there? And that's kind of the thing where, he's lived in this, this heaviness and this world of, devil worship and all of that, and that's his kind of ending. It's kind of like he knows it's coming, and he's reaching up. He wants to do everything he can to kind of stop it, but he's just frozen in time almost.
Yeah,
he kind of knows it's coming.
It's so. Yeah, I think what I've read is that he's explored a bit more in that other movie.
The first.
I don't think I've seen it, but do you remember him being explored a bit?
Yeah, from memory, I can't. It's been a while since I've seen that, and I can't remember if he's played by Ralph Ineson or if he's one of the other characters.
I think people say some people don't like how they did that, I think, because he's a bit more of a good guy in that movie or something. But people would say from this film that it looked like he was a devil worshipper that has changed. He changed his ways, and I'm not,
it's almost like the reason he's changed his ways is because he's got too close to the thing he was worshipping and realizes, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
it's not a change because he wants to be good anymore. It's a change because he's frightened of what he's opened up and what he's done.
Would you do a Ouija board? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you feel? Because, how real is this world to you in terms of, I'm not going to say do you believe in God and stuff, but I just mean, like, how would you would you go to a it's like, let's go to an abandoned mansion in the middle of the night with a camera and a torch, or would you do like a Ouija board if you're getting paid to do it, or like, do you think any of it's real?
Well, as you asked me that question, all I can hear in my head is a conversation that my family had, and my dad was saying, "Oh, I'd fucking love to go to one of these haunted houses. I'd love it because it's just nothing's going to happen, is it? Nothing's going to happen." And then on the other side, my mum saying, "Oh, I'd love for you to be scared by a ghost. I tell you, because I think my mum's very much a believer in." Maybe not in God, but in something. And my dad's very much a black and white, nah, fucking bollocks, mate, innit? That type of thing. And I kind of sit in between. Like, I know I don't believe in God, but do I believe that some creepiness happens? And do I believe that there's some unexplained shit that is quite creepy? Yeah, fuck yeah. Like, I would not stay in a haunted house. I think, interestingly, we were talking about this the other day about where Hannah done her show of Les Mis. There's an old ghost story about apparently with a sellout on opening night. There's a ghost who comes out and whatnot. And there was a part of me when I was told that by a friend of mine. I was like, do I tell Hannah? Do I not tell Hannah?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to jinx it. I don't want her to get spooked on opening night. And obviously in my head I'm going, well, that's silly. Is there a ghost? I don't know if there's a ghost, but there's enough there for me to go, I probably shouldn't tell Hannah about that, just in case. And I think it's that thing of, because you don't know, we've all watched those Most Haunted things, and Mary loves Dick. We've all seen those, and, depending on why you're watching it, you might be watching it because you want to see evidence of ghosts. You might be watching it because you want to see some people be utterly ridiculous. Who knows? But I think there's always this kind of question to me where when you turn all the lights out in the middle of the night, you don't really want to think about this shit for too long.
No.
Like, especially after you've watched a horror movie. Like, I watch a lot of horror movies, and very few horror movies have ever like properly like stuck with me to the point where I'm like, fuck, that's really scary. But there's an element of where there's something that looks a bit creepy when I'm lying in bed at night and I can see the faint light coming from our bathroom window on the hallway. You can't quite see, but you can see just enough to get shapes. In my head, I'm going, right, don't think about that thing that looks quite odd and looks quite scary. Don't think about that. Don't think about that. And then you close your eyes and try not to think about it. So that's kind of where I sit on this kind of belief system in terms of like, ghosts and ghouls and all of that kind of stuff. Would you stay in a haunted house, Simon? Because I'm going to say you probably wouldn't.
I see dead people. No, yeah, I don't know. It's what's crazy is how the sort of hyper real stuff, like like I'm clearly quite scared of. I probably need to see Eden Lake again at some point because maybe it will sort of be a little bit less scary now. I'm a bit older, 33. Than like this has been, but it's weird how you could be scared by the hyper real of like getting beaten up by some no good youths and stabbed or something. That can be really scary in a horror movie, and not. I don't know if Eden Lake is horror. Is that a horror film?
Yeah, it's horror film.
Yeah, and that can be as scary as this unseen, omnipresent, omnipotent thing in the that's sort of. I love. It's a quote in this, isn't it? Like, he's come here to build his counterfeit kingdom, and it's like, whoa! Like, there's something that really used to scare me about the devil stuff, to be honest with you, and it still does now. Like, I think there was a Paranormal Activity, spoilers alert, there's one of them where it's revealed there's a load of like scary looking nun witch ladies. Do you remember the one? Have you seen that? There's like a load of hooded people all of a sudden like capture this person. It's that the twist of whatever that is really. The devil stuff, it does scare me for some reason. It has done historically in my life, and I'm not necessarily sure why. I think it's because I'm quite a woo-woo person. I've never really had a ghost experience. I don't necessarily believe in them, but I don't disbelieve people that normal people I've met that I've no reason I would trust them to look after to drive my car, or if I had a kid, I'd be like, yeah, you can look after a child of mine. That's trustworthy people. people I know really well have seen had ghost interactions, and it's often people that have worked in like hospitals and stuff like that. I know this isn't a ghost film, but it's like, I think if you believe in ghosts, at that point,
it's not too much of a step to believe in the devil,
evil spirits, and the devil stuff. And
well, if you believe in ghosts, then like anything in life, there's good and bad of whatever.
Yeah,
it's
like Casper's.
You're going to get a Casper who just wants to be friends, and then you're going to get you're going to get a poltergeist.
Yeah,
it's that thing, and I think that's what makes this film so. What's made it last all these years, 52 years later, is the fact that 49 years later, I was thinking of The Exorcist. Although that same stands for that as well, is that there's a real kind of element of realism, but in it where if you believe in the devil, then you can resonate with some of the characters in this. If you don't believe in the devil, you can resonate with some of the characters in this. If you kind of believe but you're not quite sure, you can resonate with some of the characters in this. And it's kind of that thing of very realistic in the sense of you get people who believe, you get people who don't believe, you get people who don't know what to believe. And if the devil does exist, and I'm not trying to tempt him out to show me a sign or anything.
No, thank you.
Certainly not whilst we're recording, because that would be very, very difficult to edit out. But I've lost my train of thought now, so he's here. I can't think.
Oh God!
No,
I feel weird.
If there is a devil, then it would play with all of those insecurities that we have, and all of those things where. The devil isn't going to come out and go, I'm the devil, I'm really, really bad. No, it's probably going to play on our fears, like the fear of Robert Thorne and the fact that, he's being told by this priest that your son is not your son, he's the Antichrist. And it's like, well, I know he's not my son. And I actually, to be honest, I don't know anything about where he came from. So even if he's not the devil, you're right, I don't know who my son is.
And it would, at that point, maybe that as well is his interest, is like he would like to find the backstory.
Yeah.
The bit that is, I think, actually really creepy, actually, how they filmed it was great. I don't know what's going on, but is when they actually do go to the grave sites. That sort of place there.
Yeah.
And this a lot of, I know priests say this a lot, but older films generally have quite a lot of room to breathe, and in scary films I think that really does add to like the tension and stuff like that. I think it really helps. Like there's a bit where you just I just found myself watching it and was just like, you just don't get that anymore. They're climbing over a fence, and then the photographer climbs over a fence, and then Gregory Peck climbs over the fence. And that is it's like that.
And as silly as that sounds to our listeners, I know exactly what you mean. Like we see in movies, we see a fence and we see two characters on one side of it, and they're going, we need to get on the other side. Nowadays, we would see them coming down from the other side.
Yeah.
Whereas here, we see them literally get up and start climbing over a fence and go, oh, fucking hell, this fence is a bit high.
Bit pointy.
And it's a bit like, okay, you could cut that out and it makes no difference to the film. But it's what you're saying by letting it breathe. And the biggest example of that is the fact that this is an hour and 49 minutes. And films like this, The Exorcist, are closer to the 2-hour mark than they are the 90-minute mark, which for years and years and years, I'd probably say since the 80s, horror movies have been about 90 minutes. As a general rule, and if you get one that's a bit longer, it tends to be not necessarily not as well received, but usually people go, oh, it's quite long, that one, for a horror movie. And nowadays, I think the ones that's out at the moment is Weapons that we want to watch, and that's like just over 2 hours, and I'm looking at that going, Christ, that's quite long for a horror movie. But in the 70s, that's probably about what they were. And it's that thing of letting things breathe and, you know, having scenes which tell you about the characters and really coming at it from a point of view of telling a story rather than it just being, you know, like a Saw film, which is just a collection of crazy death scenes, or Nightmare on Elm Street, particularly the latter sequels, which became, okay, how can we do a crazier death scene? And I get that, and there is a place for that, and don't get me wrong, I do love that about horror movies. But there is something about this type of horror movie that actually you go on this journey with these characters and you want to, as soon as there's these questions that are asked, you want to get to the bottom of them.
You want to know.
Yeah, you want to know where is it? Okay, it's quite clear he's the Antichrist, but like, how? How did he get here? What happened? You know, like, how what is going on with this? You know, you want to know more. Okay, well, if they have got to, you know, protect themselves, how do they kill the Antichrist? Oh, they've got to go. You know, they've got to go to this.
A very complicated way of placing knives.
Yeah,
it's like these ones have to point outwards like this.
Yeah, like this weird game of like connect.
Yeah,
and it's like, what?
This one has to go this way, and this one, it's like, okay. And also, at one point he's already stabbed. He had no chance, because if you had to use all the knives, he's like lost his knife in the villain lady.
Yeah,
I'm sure we'll talk about her at some point. It's sorry, Ryan, I probably interrupted you there. Can I ask you though about the bit of the backstory?
Yeah, of course.
When they go to the gravesite, so the things that really, a thing I find quite scary and devilish in, you know, is the sort of really bizarre stuff. Like at the beginning, the priest, you know, says his mother was a jack, and then he gets cut off.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I don't remember what he could have been saying. And a jack, what? And then it's like a jackal. Like, because they climb over that fence, and then they dig up these graves. It's all spooky. There's dogs growling in the distance, which later attack them. And then they dig up the first grave of the adopted son's mum, correct?
Yeah.
And it's a dog. It's a jackal, like a dog.
Yeah.
That freaks me out. What the hell? What is it? What is that? Is it supposed to actually be from?
So I think so I've just typed in jackal into, and I'm just going to get cultural references. So that's Day of the Jackal. I'm going to type in the word Bible with it. Sorry, I'm just explaining my Google processing here.
All right,
so a jackal symbolizes desolation, judgment, and spiritual barrenness. So I think the idea of the reason why she's a jackal is because she has to harbour the Antichrist. So she can't be of strong faith. She can't be a strong believer in God, because her belief or her, protection from God wouldn't allow the Antichrist to grow, is how I kind of take it. And I like the idea that we see that the jackal skeleton, rather than seeing his mother as an actual jackal. I feel like it goes to that kind of thing of like, where a bit like the Antichrist and the devil, they never really show their true form, but because she's died, you see that true form, if that makes sense.
But do you think that the sort of whoever buried them just as dog there, or like it's like a weird Satanist ritual thing, or do you think that also was he like, did they think he come from a comet, like there was a star that was?
Well, in the third one,
thanks, Ryan.
So in the third one, the kind of general crux of that story is that Damien has grown up and is now a very high influence in Thorn Industries, which is this big conglomerate and this big
counterfeit company.
Yeah, counterfeit kingdom.
Yeah.
And the crux of that story is that we've had the birth of the Antichrist, and then we get the birth of the Son of God, or the I can't quite remember how they refer to it, but essentially the exact opposite of the Antichrist. And so he tries to stop that from happening, and that happens from a comet, much like it is kind of referenced here.
Yeah.
So the same way, I I sort of see it, and part of the problem I had with the third one is I sort of see it as more being symbolic. So rather than it being an actual comet, it's more a thing of he doesn't come from the comet. The comet is a sign that he's coming.
Or even it's almost like, oh, it's all myth and you don't really know, like we'll never know, is more interesting than be like, yeah, he came down from a comet, he gave birth by a dog.
Yeah.
Also, one other question, Ryan, sorry, there's the baby bones that they dig up in the other grave. Was that his biological child?
Yes.
There?
Yes, I think that's what it's. I think,
Why do they not know the child was buried there until? Do you know what I mean? That just went.
Well, she wouldn't know because she doesn't know she lost a baby. I'm guessing at that point there wasn't a good time to kind of sort all of that stuff out. It was more a thing of like, well, I've kind of just got to focus on my this family here. So I'm guessing, I think there's a big element of him being deceived quite a lot.
I think they killed the baby.
Yeah, so he's deceived by pretty much everything in that situation.
It's so dark.
So going back to what you were saying about like the jackal, did they bury, like a dog? There's a big kind of section of this which we haven't really touched upon around whether or not. I think it's quite clear that Damien is the Antichrist, but you've kind of touched upon it with this thing of did they bury the skeleton of a dog, that there is an element of like, if you believe something, does it not become true anyway? And because he keeps being fed this information that his son is the Antichrist, eventually he's going to believe it. So if he isn't the Antichrist, and actually this is all just this, extreme, religious cult who are trying to convince him that his son is the Antichrist, then they would probably go to lengths like, oh, well, let's bury the skeleton of a dog and say that he was born of a jackal. That kind of thing. I think it's that kind of undercurrent and that undertone of belief, and how, he starts out completely disregarding what the priest says, and then slowly it's like a drip, drip, drip effect of bit by bit. He then is so convinced that we get to the climax of the film where he's about to kill his own son.
Which is very like Bible-y, isn't it? Like Abraham. Yeah. God said to Abraham, kill me your son. Man said, no, you must be putting me on. That's a Bob Dylan song. The one of the only ones I know the lyrics to. I just had to say. I mean, it can't not stick with you, this film, just in general. I also love, in like The Godfather, I know it's like the joke, isn't it, in like a film studies class, what's your favourite film? The Godfather. You've told me that, haven't you, Ryan? Everyone's saying, is it from a film? Everyone's like, my favourite film, Godfather. It might even be from a film that happens in.
But it's that everybody, put it this way, if I spoke to anybody and they told me their favourite film was The Godfather, I'd be like, is it really?
Yeah.
Or have you just been told that that's what the best film ever made is?
And it's like but I do love a film with like a little expedition to like Godfather has the bit where they go to Sicily and then he gets married. It has this whole little bit, and it's probably not even that comparable to this, but it's just, if it was all sort of set in sort of England, you'd get a bit. It wouldn't. It feels like you get a bit of different culture in this film, and you get a bit of more scenery.
It certainly adds to the religious element, because England certainly, maybe more so in the 70s, but certainly nowadays isn't the most religious place in the world. So having that, that what I would call a side quest, this is quite clearly him going on a side quest to gain up enough XP to be able to take on the big boss.
Yeah.
That's kind of, in a good way, that's kind of what it feels like.
By nannies anyway.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have to deal with him.
Exactly. He's doing everything he can to actually father his son. But yeah, I think it adds to that it really brings you into this world, and this world of, the church and religion and
ruins. Ancient ruins.
Yeah.
So, this must be important. It's all broken.
I fucking love that. This must be important. It's all broken. But yeah, and I think it adds an element of gravity to the overall themes of it, where we're talking quite, not necessarily highbrow, but there's a lot of scripture talk and antichrist, false prophet, all of these phrases that I think probably lots of people have heard, but maybe know a little bit about, but maybe don't know much about unless you are, religious, unless you have gone to a lot of, gone to church a lot. And bringing it over to a place where religion is a bit more, is taken seriously a bit more, is the norm, or more the norm than it perhaps is over here, just adds a brevity to it, adds a seriousness to it. The only thing which I think really stood out to me is when they go to see the priest who was the only survivor from the fire of the hospital where Damien was born. Obviously, he has a scar on his face from, I'm presuming, burns. And when he when Gregory Peck first sees him, he puts his fist to his mouth, and as if like he's like really trying not to gag. And I'm just like, it's not that bad. Come on, like let's now you're just letting your mind run wild with all this stuff, because now there's a guy with a slightly creepy looking face, and
you're trying not to gag.
That go back home and father your son.
Well, who's looking after his son at that point is that who is what I would describe as a sort of Austin Powersy James Bond lady, with the boot here, the boot knife.
I know exactly what you mean.
That sort of thing. And in she's the Dr. Evil's sort of second in command. No, that's number 2. It's the other lady, but she's great actually. And she's really good when they have a proper showdown.
Yeah, she for the most part of the film is kind of the real sense of something sinister, isn't she? She's the one who, going back to that thing of, is Damien the Antichrist? If you're asking that question, she's the one who opens the door and lets him ride his little bicycle out and knocks off his own mother off the balcony. She's the one who opens the door, and she knows why she's opening the door. And they're going back to that question of whether you believe it. So there's a point of view of Gregory Peck's character doesn't quite believe it and has to be convinced of it. And then on the other side of the spectrum, she 100% believes he's the Antichrist. And there's this, very heavy kind of insinuation that she's kind of governed by this, and she's been sent as a protector, much like we have the dogs.
An apostate.
She's a protector of him to make sure he, reaches his full potential. But if you're looking at it from a point of view of questioning whether or not this is all real, and whether or not this is all just playing into people's fears and people's questioning of the unknown, then she is just a fanatic who believes.
And she kills the mum, I think.
Yeah. She's the one who,
so it's like,
pushes her out of the hospital window onto an ambulance.
So it's like generally Damien hasn't done anything that really, his physical actions throughout the whole film. The dog, there's a weird glance at the beginning when the first nanny, before she hangs herself, she goes, "This is for you, Damien. It's all for you," or something like that. And she,
I love you, Damien. This is for you, and then jumps off.
There's the photographer's death's quite famous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all sort of a bit of a Final Destination one with the glass sheet falling off like is that it?
Yeah, off the back of a pickup truck.
Yeah, because of the handbrake wasn't left.
Yeah, you keep mentioning Final Destination, and I kind of picked up on it, and it's the bit. It is in that death scene of the photographer, when you see the handbrake just go down,
Yeah.
it does feel very much like there's, like you say, there's this Final Destination-esque kind of presence causing all of these things to happen.
It feels like you're watching one of those, like it's on that YouTube and stuff these days of like, or like a reel or something, when someone knocks a domino and then it knocks like a DVD and then it launches toast in a toaster. And you're like, oh, I'm watching the beginning of a chain reaction and somehow it's going to end in this person dying. It would be really cool, wouldn't it, to see it at the cinema when this came out, when those things hadn't been done as much and stuff. It doesn't matter though; it still works now. It's just you know what's coming the moment that handbrake is it just goes down. I think the scenes I like the bit when they're attacked by dogs. The photographer character in general he's quite cool, and he's got, because he's got skin in the game as well, because on one of his photos in the mirror, like, it had the line through him as well. His haircut's quite interesting.
I mean, it's that sort of 70s.
It's a bit like a monk as well.
Yeah, it's that kind of 70s Beatles-esque.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
you can quite easily see him like speaking to Paul McCartney about, I've come up with this great song, and I think the scene where they go to the graveyard, the brilliance of it, and I don't know if you picked it out or if you can notice, is that for me, it's so obvious that they're on a set, that they aren't actually on location. And I love that, because it means that this graveyard has something odd about it. Something that it all looks like it should, but something's off. And it's those things where when you do work on sets, there's something about it that just makes it look like a set.
Yeah. It's kind of obvious.
And
to
in
me
the
now.
context of this film,
feels like Buffy.
Yeah.
I've
just finished watching all of Buffy.
Oh, fair.
Yeah, so it's funny you should mention that. But in the context of this film, it works so well that I can clearly see something's off. Something's not quite right. Something doesn't, it's almost those things of not being able to put your finger on why. It's almost a sense and a feeling sometimes where you go, something's wrong, something doesn't feel quite right. And that feeds into the whole of this film so well. And then you get on top of that, you get these crazy looking, scary dogs who come and attack them. It's like, again, just playing into my worst fear. I'm in a graveyard where I shouldn't be, and I get attacked by dogs.
And it's a reveal moment, isn't it? It's like a big reveal and as the set gets fantastical and weird, like the plot gets weirder and weirder. And then, it went over my head a bit, but he's looking at the skeleton and I think of his son, which is really, really grim. It's like and the dogs being there, like they are at this point. There's no reason why in the middle of like north of Rome, or whatever, there's just a load of like hellhounds that are in like a graveyard, and it's all at that point. I think you can be pretty damn sure from any character's perspective in this. You can be pretty sure that there's some sinister like devil worship stuff. And that's what, in real life, there's someone out there hanging out in robes worshipping devil. You just know, because there's someone doing everything.
There's, from their perspective, best case scenario, it's just people believing that the devil exists and creating some weird stuff. Worst case scenario, the devil actually does exist, and wherever we go, he can send hellhounds. Wherever we go, he can cause a plate of glass to cut somebody's head off. Whatever we do, we can't escape it, And I think it's that thing of just hitting upon it with me saying what I just said, that faith, whatever side of the spectrum or whatever faith you have, regardless of where you are, both physically, spiritually, mentally, is always with you in some way, shape or form. As I say, like, I'm not religious at all, as you know, but when something, when Hannah goes for an audition, in my head I go, please God, let her get it. I don't believe in God, but that's what I say.
Yeah.
You know, it's that thing of wherever you go, there is this undercurrent of, well,
we do all the things. We bring the trees in at Christmas for some weird reason.
Yeah.
You know, like, not saying that's their Christmas.
we don't walk underneath ladders.
Yeah.
All of those weird superstitious things.
You say bless you.
Yeah, yeah.
And you do these things. That's the thing. It's in this book.
My mum, to this day, if you put a pair of brand new shoes in a box on the table, she'll say, get them off the table.
Why?
Because, I don't know, it's just an old wives' tale. It's just an old superstition. Like, if she drops a knife in the kitchen, she'll ask my dad to go and pick it up for her.
Wow.
Because, you know, even the thing of, like, I've seen her a couple of times, she's making dinner and she, you know, seasons something with a bit of salt, one over the shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things which, on the face of it, are utterly ridiculous. You know, like, I've just said, why does she do that? And I'm like, I don't know. That's why she does it. But, you know, maybe it is all. Maybe,
well, if
who
you're
knows?
doing it anyway, what does it matter? If it's you know, if it's that thing of like, if you're doing a spiritual thing or a religious act or a ritual, like a ritualistic thing that friends sort over you, you know, like these types of things. If you're doing it because you believe in something, or if you do it just because you do it every day, you're still doing it. So it's like the action is still happening. And I feel like in this, oh God, you know, at this point, if Gregory Peck's character, he's just, I think he's realizing, you know, he's like, you have to get to sort of safety, doesn't he, to his wife, and I wish he was just a little bit more upfront with his wife, I think, just in general, in this film, just a little bit more like, you know, this is how... And I did also think it, like, the way she's sort of wrapped up in bandages and cast is a bit like a sort of Carry On movie at this point. Like, it can't get much worse for her, you think.
No, yeah.
You think. And then she's, like, tossed out of, like, a 4-story building. Her ambulance just pulled up, and she's like, ah! You know, and I assume as well, maybe the police think it was him that did it, because they're on the scene, like when he goes back to, and they sort of chase him.
There is this kind of, I think as soon as they kind of see that he, just trying to remember it and place it in my mind, but the police get the call that he's taking his son, and his son's like screaming and fighting, and so they go to sort of like, you know, have a look and see what's going on, and they follow him, and obviously follow him to the church. So I think there is that kind of insinuation that they definitely think he had something to do with his wife's death, or it's something a bit weird where his wife's just died. He hasn't come to see her.
Yeah,
he's just gone to his son, and his son's screaming. You know what I mean? There's something going on. But whilst we're on that scene, you know, Lee Remick's character dying, it's shot brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly, where you get the close-up of the nanny, which it feels really, really intimate and really kind of like that. I suppose that's the closest we get to what I would say is kind of traditional horror, where it's like a scary looking thing looking scary.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean. A lot, you know, as we've kind of been discussing, a lot of the scariness of this film is more through suggestion and the unseen presence, and a lot of that comes down to the music, actually.
Yeah, of course.
You know, Jerry Goldsmith won an Academy Award for this score, and rightly so, because the first moment where Damien sees the dog, and there's that kind of almost electro type music where it's like, feels very much like there's like this telepathy thing going on.
It is a telepathic sound, though. It's a bit X-Files-y.
Yeah, like very Twilight Zone-y, and in a weird way, you know. And I like the way it's a telepathic sound. Like, and that people will hear that. Some people will hear that and go, well, that sounds ridiculous. What do you mean? But some people go, I know exactly what you
know what
mean.
it is. It does feel a bit Superman-y or something.
Yeah,
that sound in that bit. I don't know.
It's a little bit like Jor-El talking to Clark Kent. You know, a little bit kind of spiritual guidance.
Oh yeah, okay,
That kind of thing.
You're right.
In this instance, it's a little bit more sinister.
Yeah.
It's like, don't worry, I'm here as your protector. Don't worry, it's that kind of thing. But obviously, he's the Antichrist. And it's like, oh god, it's I'm not here to to look after you because people are trying to kill you because you're Earth's last hope. No, you're the Antichrist, and people are going to try and kill you because you're so powerful. It's pretty crazy. But the music does so much, and obviously that sort of like Georgian chanting that happens, oh, oh, that kind of thing. You hear that, and immediately you kind of feel a little bit on edge. You're not quite sitting as comfortably as you were when you hear that, and then you see that along with Damien, and it's a bit freakier again.
I mean, that is the sort of scary. It's funny, isn't it? Because this type of thing all just lines up. You get some scary sounding old music. It all works for this film, doesn't it? Like it's scary sounding, whatever that chanting is. Like, God, how do you know to come up with that? and then stick it to something like this. And at that point when they're sitting in their editing room with it and the film's playing or whatever, they must just be like, we've got something gold here, I think, because it's like, it is this. I can imagine this is quite powerful in the cinema as well. I'd love to see this if it gets reshown again or something. Maybe on 50 years next year or something.
Yeah, 50
that would
years
probably
next
be
year.
the time then.
Yeah, absolutely. And even going to like it has real kind of light and shade with the music, because when he first brings baby Damien into Catherine, his wife, there's this really kind of hopeful, uplifting, serene music that's playing, and it's almost like you can see them by a lake having a picnic, laughing, in like some weird like dreamlike montage. It's that kind of feel to it, and it's very, very contrasting with the Georgian chanting and the and all of that, and then the telepathic noise, which totally sums it up 100%. So I'm going to be using that phrase going forward. You remember the telepathic noise in the Omen?
This character, when they go to these ruins and he shows them the knives, he's sort of more like a sort of I don't know. It feels. It does really feel like we're on a quest out there, doesn't it? And they're just sort of meeting all these. At one point, it really reminded me of like a video game when the priest is I don't know what they're doing. It's when the photographer takes a photo of him and then he just walks off. He goes, "Meet me this place 2 p.m. tomorrow." He just walks off like a sort of an NPC.
Yeah, he feels very much like a trader. He'd be the guy that you'd go and buy your gear off.
He's the shop.
Yeah, he's the merchant in Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, he is.
Or it feels like you'd buy a health tonic off of him. Like, I'm a bit low on health. Here, take this brand new health tonic. You can upgrade, so you can get even more health out. He feels very, like he's almost a little bit like the church's equivalent of Q from James Bond. We've got holy water here. We can use that against the devil. We've got crosses. We've got that's the guy you'd go to. And so, how do you feel about the whole? Here I think there's 7 knives, isn't there? I want to say 7. But
there isn't.
There's a number of knives, isn't there, that they have to use in a particular way in order to kill the Antichrist. How do you kind of feel about that as a narrative device? Because I'm not quite sure where I sit on it, and probably because I've seen where it goes in the latter bits, in the latter sequels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are 7. There was definitely 7.
Oh, do they ever use all these knives?
Well, they kind of do and they kind of don't.
In the Sam Neill one?
In the Sam Neill one, there's a bit where...
He is good as him, isn't he? Should we just say?
He is. And I think it's the film, I think, is a bit of a disservice to him, because I think he's for his age, and obviously we know where Sam Neill ends up and how successful he becomes, but it's kind of universally quite panned, that movie.
Okay.
And it isn't great, admittedly, but there are some silver linings. But the thing that is in that film, there's like this almost like a Van Helsing type group who are like hunting the Antichrist, and they've all got their knives. But what's weird about it is there's a bit where only one of them comes, and I think they quite clearly say that they all have to be at the same time or in a very particular order or something. Like, it's not just as simple as stabbing him with one of these knives. And it's kind of just a really shoddy, weird way of, like, so there's this guy who looks like he's never held a knife in his life, and he's going up to the Antichrist being like he's going to get him.
Yeah.
And then there's like a load of, because I think they've gone fox hunting again.
Okay.
There's like a load of dogs that just chase after this guy, and he's like, woo, and then runs back to his car and can't get in his car, and then gets.
I remember that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not sure where I kind of stand on it. It feels like a bit of a. I kind of get the idea of, well, it's the Antichrist, so it's got to be hard to kill him. It can't just be, one and done type thing.
I think it sort of gives this idea that it's all so. I think it works for the character at this point, Gregory Peck's character, Mr. Thorne, because it's all so extreme, like, and you really don't think that he's gonna commit to doing it. I think at this point, and then the photographer obviously says, I'll do it then," and that's when he gets killed. And then you think, when can the devil, when can he enact his sort of divine sort of, or what the opposite of divine, his satanic sort of, judgment, and, and shift a handbrake or two to kill someone. Anyway, but yeah, the knives, I feel like it's all just so extreme and fanatical, and, it's almost a bit pointless, because even that's what I mean as well. I'm pretty sure Gregory Peck uses one of the knives to kill the woman.
Yeah, he does.
So for me, watching it now, it's like the moment he leaves that one with her, I just think, well, he can't kill the Antichrist then.
Yeah.
But I get the impression that even if he did try and do it, he might just use one. I also think, maybe I just realised, maybe at the end he goes to stab himself, because I'm not convinced that he's ever going to stab Damien, really.
It is a massive leap, isn't it? And actually, that scene is actually quite difficult to watch, especially because Damien doesn't really have that many lines. His dialogue is quite few and far between. And we obviously at that point we really hear him like, "Daddy, no, Daddy, no," and it's actually like, fucking hell, like, this is really fucked up, like, and it's actually quite a difficult kind of watch. And so you kind of you're almost glad when he gets shot, or when the police come in and fire the gun and obviously shoots Gregory Peck. It's kind of like, oh, thank God for that.
Does it turn out that is the only way you can kill him?
Yeah. That's the avenue they go down. I think
for this film it works. I think if that is the thing they carry on doing, I'd be a bit like, I don't know. But I think I remember though the sequels not being. It's always so hard, isn't it, to capture the magic?
Yeah, I mean the second one I think is quite a little bit underrated.
Yeah.
I think because it comes after this, and a little bit like The Exorcist, when you have sequels, if they're not as good as, they're immediately terrible. And I don't think it's terrible. Like, I think the writer of The Omen, David Seltzer, kind of sums it up quite well. He says that there has to be kind of this question as to whether or not he is the Antichrist. Because as soon as the question is answered, then it just becomes like a serial killer movie.
Yeah. And is that what it becomes?
And that's essentially what it becomes, because there's a lot more agency in Damien, and he kind of understands who he is, and he knows that he's the Antichrist.
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit more like, well, what's Damien going to do next? How is he going to kill?
You get the elevator death scene in number 2, maybe?
Yes, you do, yeah.
Even growing up, like I remember, like Mum with the third one. My brother knows it quite well, I think, because he likes Sam Neill. But I remember it would be the sort of thing my Mum would say, "Oh, it gets a bit silly," it's a bit silly, that one, like it's and I remember it not being, even growing up, you just know that one's not. It's not really the it's not what you it's not what this one is.
When people think of the Omen, they're not gonna think of number 2.
No,
they might think number 2 is a number 2.
Yeah,
but they're not going to think of number. So that was a really bad joke there. I just had to check myself.
But I
do
remember
apologise.
number 2 being quite all right, though.
Yeah, but it's not what people are going to remember about it.
Okay. But the fox hunting, I don't know. That did stick with me.
I think you'd only really remember it if you think of the Omen and you think of that. It's probably more because that might have been the one you saw first.
Yeah, maybe.
Or it's the only one you've seen. I don't think if you'd seen them all and this was the first one, I don't think you'd think of the second one quite as much. I think the third one, all I really remembered before rewatching it was that it had Sam.
Yes.
There's
a reason for that, isn't there? I think that maybe this story, like that, like maybe he obviously knows, but you're right. It can only be interesting. It's so much better when there's stuff left unexplained and when you can't quite get when they don't explain the whole universe and you don't have backstories into every individual character. It's so much nicer when there's some empty space around it, and I think intrigue.
And that's the thing. Like, from an audience perspective, yes, we fill in the blanks, but also from a point of view of like longevity. If this had explained every single thing about this story, there'd have been nowhere to go. It would have all been, well, we know that. We don't need to see that. We know that. But because it leaves those things unanswered, it has a route to take. Now, I'm not saying that they made this movie with the intention of there being a franchise or a sequel or whatever it may be, but there's a place to go. Like, there's a reason why a sequel gets made, rightly or wrongly. And I think as soon as those sequels get made, more of those questions inevitably get answered, meaning that there's less places for it to go. Yeah. And so naturally, when you've had, 3 sequels, okay, one of them is a TV movie and then a prequel, you're asking the questions from the point of view because you don't know, because you haven't necessarily seen them all. Whereas I'm going, well, I know what the answer to that is because that's
what it said.
Yeah, and then you have that awkward thing that happens a lot of the time with like superhero movies or long-running film franchises where things are like, well, is that canon? Is, like Star Wars is a perfect example. Is that actually canon? Is that part of that universe, or is that just an interpretation? And then you get to the point where it's like you've diluted everything that this kind of created.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because the legacy of this film, luckily this first film is so good that the legacy is tarnished a tiny bit, but not to a point where people can't appreciate how good this film is. But if this film wasn't quite as good, like sometimes you get a film which is, that weren't too bad, and then you get a sequel and then another sequel and another. I'm thinking of like the Fast and Furious franchise.
It doesn't matter. They're not ruining the first one. By making loads of them.
The first one was all right, but did it really warrant a sequel? Well, okay, we got one.
But that has less impact on the first one. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not like, I wish they didn't keep up with these because the first one had enough.
Yeah.
Whereas the Omen does actually have enough with.
Yeah.
And it does just have
You don't need to go and watch 2, 3, 4 or the prequel. If you do, fair enough, but you don't need to,
I think as well, it's like, it is that story of the Abraham, really, of that thing of like, God said, kill me a son, and then he goes up to somewhere and then he's going to kill his son or something. And or something. I don't know that much about it.
And that is a direct quote.
Yeah, but it's like, and then just as he's going to do it, I think God says, don't worry. I was just testing your faith.
Mm.
And it's this thing of like, I don't think you're stooping to the devil's level, aren't you, if you're using all these knives to kill a child, even if he is going to be the,
Yeah.
what it's like, would you kill the baby Hitler or child Hitler? Like, I don't think I could do it. You know what I mean? Some people might like to think they could, but I don't think you could. And I think it's such a powerful thing. This ending that's coming is the Omen is like, it is so, it's such a massive sort of question of like free will, and he seems that right at the end of the movie he smiles to the camera, but then he is a kid, and then is it just a reminder you're in a movie? He's okay.
Yeah. And I think you've touched upon something there where, and it's something that I've never really thought about, but actually makes perfect sense, whereby we take this very literal as, Damien is the Antichrist, but there's this opportunity to explore it in the terms of he's not the Antichrist, but he's the vessel of the Antichrist. And what I mean by that is that child being there has pushed Gregory Peck to this point. All of these things are potentially coincidences, but the very notion that his son could be the Antichrist means that he's let the devil in, because he's now, as you say, stooping to that level. Isn't that exactly what the devil would want?
I think so.
It's not necessarily about him being the Antichrist and his son being, the physical spawn of Satan. No, it's more about what effect it has on Gregory Peck and what effect it has on the people around that child. He's now become a killer. He's killed the nanny at the very least, and he's about to kill that child.
And the omnipresent being never tries to kill Gregory Peck.
No.
It's part of his plan almost. So you could say, like, it never, the moment the photographer's like, I'm going to do it, then it like kills him.
Yeah.
Like, the
like,
forces come and kill him.
This isn't about you. This is about him.
Yeah.
It's all.
And it's like, because he knows that maybe he'll try and do it.
I mean, it's very Dark Knight-esque, where it's like the whole Harvey Two-Face thing, where it's like we took the White Knight of Gotham. If we can make Harvey Two-Face, if we can make him the bad guy, then anybody can be the bad guy because of what he stood for. And Gotham, this has gone on a bit of a tangent, but Gotham, if they knew that, then it would break Gotham. But Batman can be, the villain in that bit. And I think it's kind of this, where if we can get Gregory Peck, this man of high morals and this man of, belief, and this man who is a respected person in his community, he's an ambassador for the US in Great Britain. If we can get him to kill his own son, then anybody can be got at. And it's, it's almost like that's a question that's been being asked as well, that I've never really, up until we have this conversation, which is why I love, doing these podcasts, because you start talking about movies in ways that you perhaps haven't in the past. And I think that the beauty of this film is that there's so many interpretations and so many different ways that you can take it.
Yeah, if you stuck, now in a modern movie, if you stuck this, or in a Netflix show, you'd stick the end scene at the beginning, and you'll have flashbacks to it.
Yeah,
for Netflix.
yeah.
You'd be like, how does he get to that point where he's going to kill a child?
And there'd be a narration as well. Let me tell you about the time I nearly killed my son.
But it's like, if this film out of this, I know it's probably could happen with any scene in a movie, but this scene out of context looks like he's a psychopath serial killer, child killer that's fanatical and going to kill his child in church. And it's like, it's so at odds with the character you meet at the beginning, really, and nothing would have really driven into this. But all this evil and talk of evil and cultish, fanatical people with their beliefs, and people just that hang out with a load of knives in merchant stalls and in ruins, and apostate, crazy nannies that aren't really nannies. That they never seem to sack her, even though they both know that she's they could have sacked her at some point. They had the time.
It's that scene where she's like, "Oh, could you make sure Damien's dressed?" Like, "Oh, I don't think him going to the church is a good idea." It's almost like you want to say, "Oh, hang on a minute, I didn't ask for your opinion. just go and get him ready. And it's, there's that point, and then there's the point where he's like, I told you before about that dog.
I told you about that massive Rottweiler.
Yeah, that massive Rottweiler who looks like he's going to bite your face off. Let's not have him so close to Damien, please. Oh, it's all right. I've sent him away.
I'm pretty sure he could afford some sort of, and then I guess at the end,
I think what it is that right there is a sign that you should always check the references, because I don't think they do check the references.
They look quite thick, to be fair. I don't know
they were like, oh, okay, that sums it up. They heard about our nanny's death in the paper, and they send somebody. What?
It's all a bit. Oh God! And at the end, I don't. To be fair, the ending sequence, the funeral, he has like a big American funeral and stuff. Nothing really happens apart from I know nothing is going to happen, but I guess it's not. It's pretty sort of by the book, isn't it? Like there's no sort of evil character in the background. I guess the whole reveal is that he's been taken on by another family. I think they say Mr. President. Is he the president's kid in the next?
No, he's the ambassador.
Okay.
So. Yeah, so in the next one, he's taken in by the brother of who I don't know if he's. I think he's the president of Thorn Industries.
Oh, so, okay, that's why they call him.
Yeah, so essentially, for a bit more context, oh no, he does say Mr. President. So maybe actually, at this point, they were implying that he's taken on by the president.
I see.
So.
We've got that scene. That's what we're just pausing for, is when he's looking directly at the camera, looking very menacing and scary. And then all of a sudden he sort of
has that little smirk. Smile. And it is really freaky. And I think going back to the prequel, sorry, not the prequel, the remake, which has Liev Schreiber and I can't think of the actress's name, but it has Liev Schreiber as the Gregory Peck character. One of the problems that has is that it does that classic mid-noughties thing where the colour palette is really dark and dingy and really grey. And at no point in this film, in the original, does it feel like that. It doesn't try to convince you that there's this presence, and the way it does that is by showing you there's no colour in this world. It doesn't do that, whereas in the remake it does, and everything looks a bit dingy. And then the kid they've got to play Damien, like they have clearly made him try to make him look scarier than he actually does, which is interesting because the kid who plays Damien in the original isn't dark haired at all. He's bleach blonde.
Oh really? And
doesn't have, I think, blue eyes. He has, I think, brown eyes, or he has different coloured eyes because they use contact lenses. And it's almost like it's an example of trying too hard. Like sometimes the scariest things are the things that are most realistic, rather than it being, look how scary this kid looks. Damien on the face of it doesn't look scary in the film. It's all the other contextual things that make it scary. It's the telepathic music with the Rottweiler. It's the fact that the nanny's just gone and jumped off the building and hung herself. And there's all of that other stuff.
The kerfuffle in the car when they... kerfuffle, it's worse than that. When they're in the car and they're going to church and he's sort of scratching and that. It feels just like it does kind of feel like a kid tantruming, but it's filmed like all crazy.
Yeah, it's the way things are shot, whereas, the remake is very much...
He's an evil kid.
Yeah, it's very clearly trying to tell you what's happening. Whereas whilst we have always said that Damien is the Antichrist, it's very clear. It's also, there's an ambiguity about it.
I think if you just watch this one, you can definitely come away with it thinking you could speak all night at dinners going, I don't actually think maybe, they might have set him up. You could probably say there was never a switch.
Yeah, if you remember this line, it quite clearly points at there being a bit more to it.
Yeah.
There's a lot more kind of mystery to it, whereas in the remake it is like, well, clearly this is a freaky kid movie because the kid looks freaky. Yeah. They've got a freaky looking kid. He didn't look freaky. It's just everything else. And the reason why the Del Boy joke works so well is it's not the fact that Damien in Only Fools and Horses is the Antichrist. It's just the fact he's called Damien. It's all the contextual things that make it freaky, and that's what makes it funny, you know. And I think remakes, on the whole, I think miss the point more often than not about why the original warranted a remake in the first place.
But then if you follow it note for note, you may as well just watch the original. So they almost have to miss the point to do anything.
Yeah.
New.
I mean, the classic one is Gus Van Sant's remake of Psycho, which was shot for shot exactly the same. And
is it good?
No, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible.
It's just, I will say this, because we're probably getting to the end now of this, the Omen, but the Gregory Peck at times, I did get a bit of Naked Gun vibe from him, just how he responded to some of the things, and I was like, oh, he would have been a good in a comedy thing. I don't know if he ever has been.
Yeah.
But he just has a sort of, what's the guy from Naked Gun?
Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen. He has a sort of, I could see him in that.
Yeah, there's a... Because Leslie Nielsen, obviously, before he done The Naked Gun, as we discussed, came from like a serious background. You know, he's a serious actor. And you could see that with Gregory Peck. You could see, the reason it works and why it's so funny is because it's Gregory Peck.
He's quite a lovable type character. He's you feel quite safe with him.
Very distinctive eyebrows.
Yeah, quite big eyebrows.
Which are very good for telling a story.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bury Our Bones with Cinema. We really appreciate you joining us as we deep dive into the world of film. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages to stay informed. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram at Bury Our Bones with Cinema. You've been listening to Jimmy Murphy, Simon Key and Ryan Etherington. We will see you next time for more cinematic discussions and hidden treasures. Until then, don't forget to keep your bones buried in the world of cinema. And it will be a one-button job. Boom, 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 toom, toom, toom.
I have a terrible tendency to just scroll about and if you're talking, when we're doing it, I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird, but I suppose...
maybe if you listen to it back, see if it sounds... I was like, I'm going to have to stop it. You're listening back like...
Good job I observed that well, wasn't it?